Under the faded glow of a suburban veterinary clinic, a 32-year-old black veterinarian locks up alone. Her hands, skilled in healing, now tremble from the weight of life's wounds, racial slurs from patients, silent judgment from colleagues, and a bitter custody fight threatening to steal her daughter. But fate intervenes when a lonely billionaire arrives after hours, cradling his injured golden retriever. Drawn by her quiet strength, he offers more than gratitude, a connection neither expected. As walls crumble and hearts awaken, will love become her refuge or her greatest risk? Stay tuned to discover how a mother's fight for family becomes a story of healing, hope, and home. If this story moves you, hit subscribe and share where you're listening from, your city, your time of day. The fluorescent lights of the Oak Ridge Veterinary Clinic flickered, casting a cold, sterile glow across the examination room where Mila Johnson worked. Her nimble fingers, calloused from years of tending to wounded creatures, moved with practiced precision as she sutured a stray cat's torn paw. The clock on the wall ticked toward 9:45 p.m., its relentless rhythm a reminder of the long hours that defined her existence. Mila's dark skin glistened with a faint sheen of sweat, her brow furrowed in concentration. At 32, she carried the weight of dreams deferred and battles yet to be fought, her heart a battlefield where hope clashed with despair. The cat, a scrawny tabby with eyes like tarnished coins, mewed softly under her touch. Mila whispered to it, her voice a soothing balm. "You're safe now, little one." But the words felt hollow, echoing her unspoken yearning for safety. She was more than a veterinarian. She was a healer, a lover of creatures great and small, yet the world seemed determined to remind her of her place. "Just a black vet," she murmured, the phrase a bitter refrain etched into her soul by years of sidelong glances and whispered slights at the clinic, her colleagues' forced smiles, the manager's refusal to acknowledge her skill, all chipped away at her spirit, leaving scars no suture could mend. Mila's phone buzzed in the pocket of her faded scrubs, jarring her from her task. She ignored it, knowing the message's sender without looking. Douglas, her ex-husband, was a white police officer whose wealth and influence loomed like a storm cloud over her life. Their marriage, once a fragile promise of love, had crumbled under his controlling grip, leaving her with nothing but their daughter Emma and a custody battle that threatened to tear even that away. The cat stirred, and Mila refocused, tying off the final stitch. She bandaged the paw, her hands trembling not from fatigue, but from the weight of a court letter tucked in her pocket, its words a countdown to judgment. 18 days until the hearing. That would decide Emma's fate. The clinic's back door creaked open, and Dr. Ellis, the head veterinarian, leaned in, his pinched face illuminated by the harsh light. "Go home, Mila," he said, his tone clipped, eyes skittering away from hers as if her presence was an inconvenience. She nodded, biting back the retort that burned on her tongue. To him, she was a quota filled, a diversity checkbox, not a colleague whose skill rivaled his own. She cleaned her tools, the clink of metal against the sink a stark counterpoint to the silence that followed his departure. Alone, she pulled out her phone, the screen glowing with Douglas's latest message. "Emma deserves better than you. Give up." The words seared her, each one a dagger aimed at her heart, conjuring memories of his cold voice dictating her every move during their marriage. Mila shoved the phone away, her breath hitching as she fought the tears prickling her eyes. She crossed the room to a small cage where the tabby now rested, its breathing steadier. "You and me, we're survivors," she told it, her voice barely above a whisper. The clinic's hum filled the void, refrigerators whirring, the faint drip of a faucet, the buzz of lights that seemed to mock her with their unyielding glare. She gathered her things, the court letter crinkling against the fabric of her scrubs, a constant reminder of the fight ahead. Emma's face flashed in her mind, her 6-year-old's gap-toothed smile, her curls bouncing as she hugged a stray puppy Mila had once brought home. That smile was her anchor, her reason to endure. Stepping into the parking lot, Mila shivered as the cool night air kissed her skin. her breath fogging under the sodium glow of streetlights. Her sedan, a battered relic of better days, waited like a loyal but weary companion. She fumbled with her keys, her fingers stiff from the evening's work, when headlights sliced through the darkness. A sleek SUV pulled up, its engine a low growl. A man emerged, tall and broad-shouldered, cradling a golden retriever whose whimpers pierced the quiet. His face, lined with quiet sorrow, held a plea as he approached. "Please," he said, his voice deep and urgent, resonant with a sincerity that caught Mila off guard. "My dog, Max, he's hurt. Are you still open?" Mila's exhaustion urged her to say no, to point him to the 24-hour clinic downtown. The clinic was closed, her shift long over. But Max's pained cries tugged at her, a call she couldn't ignore. "Bring him in," she said, unlocking the door with a sigh, the chime of the bell echoing in the space. The man followed, his presence filling the room like a tide, steady but not overwhelming. As Mila set up the exam table, she stole a glance at him, dark hair flecked with gray, eyes that held a story she couldn't yet read. "I'm Nathan Hart," he said, his tone soft, almost reverent. "Thank you for this." "Mila Johnson," she replied, her focus on Max. The dog's paw was swollen, a thorn embedded deep. She worked quickly, cleaning the wound, her hands a blur of care and precision. Max relaxed under her touch, his tail giving a weak thump. Nathan watched, his gaze steady, tracing her movements with an intensity that made her skin prickle. "He'll be fine," Mila said, meeting his eyes briefly, her voice firm to mask the tremor within. "Keep him off that paw for a week." Nathan nodded, reaching into his wallet. He slid a crisp $100 bill across the counter for a $30 visit. "Keep the change," he said, his smile gentle but resolute. Mila's pride flared, a spark in the dimness of her fatigue. "I don't need charity," she snapped, pushing the bill back, her fingers brushing the cool paper. He held up a hand, his expression unyielding yet kind. "It's not charity, it's gratitude." Before she could argue, he lifted Max, the dog nestling against him, and left, the door's chime fading into the night. Mila stood frozen, the bill a weight in her hand. She tucked it into her pocket beside the court letter, the two papers pressed against her like opposing forces, despair, and a flicker of hope. She locked the clinic, the key cold in her palm, and stepped into the darkness. Her sedan sputtered to life, carrying her toward the small apartment where Emma slept, unaware of the battles her mother fought. The road stretched ahead, lined with shadowed oaks, their branches swaying in the breeze. Mila's thoughts churned. Douglas's threats, the hearing, the dream of a rescue center she'd buried long ago. Yet Nathan's voice lingered, a quiet spark in the void, his kindness a question she wasn't ready to answer. As she drove, a black SUV appeared in her rearview mirror, its headlights a predatory glare. Her pulse quickened, her grip tightening on the wheel. Was it Douglas watching, waiting? The vehicle lingered, then turned down a side street, leaving her alone with the hum of the engine and the weight of her fears. Mila exhaled, her breath shaky, but her resolve hardened. For Emma, for the creatures she saved, she would fight. The night swallowed her car, but in her heart a faint light burned, fragile but unyielding, whispering that her story was far from over. The dawn broke over Oak Ridge with a bruise of clouds, the air heavy with the promise of rain. Mila Johnson stood at her kitchen counter, pouring coffee into a chipped mug, her dark skin catching the muted light filtering through the window. Her daughter, Emma, sat cross-legged on the floor, coloring a picture of a puppy with fierce concentration, her crayons scattering like confetti. Mila's heart ached at the sight. Emma's innocence was a beacon in the storm of her life, a cause, a reminder of why she endured. The court letter in her pocket, its edges worn from restless fingers, loomed like a guillotine, 17 days away from deciding their future. Douglas's latest message, "Emma deserves better," echoed in her mind, a venomous chant she couldn't silence. Mila drove Emma to school, the sedan's engine rattling as they passed tidy suburban homes, their lawns a stark contrast to her fraying existence. At the Oak Ridge Veterinary Clinic, the atmosphere was as chilly as the overcast sky. Her colleagues' whispers followed her through the kennels. "She's too sensitive," one muttered. "Doesn't fit here." Mila's jaw tightened, but she focused on cleaning a dog's crate, her hands moving with mechanical precision. Dr. Ellis approached, his face a mask of false regret. "Mila, we're cutting your hours," he said, his voice flat. "Budget. Constraints." The lie hung between them, as transparent as the glass partition behind him. She knew the truth. Her presence, her skill, her very skin challenged his comfortable world. "Understood," she replied, her tone clipped, swallowing the rage that burned her throat. Fewer hours meant less money for Emma's books, for the, lawyer she could barely afford. The day dragged, each task a reminder of her precarious place. Mila's thoughts churned. Douglas's threats, the custody battle, the dream of a rescue center she'd buried under years of rejection. As she scrubbed, a water bowl. The clinic's door chimed and Nathan Hart entered, his golden retriever Max trotting beside him. His presence was a quiet disruption, his dark hair damp from the drizzle outside, his eyes carrying a warmth that unsettled her. "Check up for Max," he said, but his gaze lingered on Mila's tense shoulders, reading the strain she tried to hide. She knelt to examine the dog, her fingers probing Max's healed paw with care. "He's doing well," she said, her voice steady despite the turmoil within. "Keep him rested a bit longer." Nathan leaned against the counter, his plaid shirt rolled up to reveal forearms etched with quiet strength. "You're good at this," he said, his tone conversational but piercing. "Ever thought of running your place?" Mila's laugh was sharp, a shard of glass in the sterile room. "Dreams don't pay bills," she said, turning to sterilize her tools, the clink of metal a barrier against his probing. But Nathan persisted, his voice low, deliberate. "I looked into you, Mila. Heard the clinic's giving you trouble. I want to help." Her head snapped up, defenses flaring like a cornered animal. "I don't need pity," she snapped, her eyes narrowing. He shook his head, unfazed. "Not pity. A partnership. I fund a rescue center. You run it. Full control. Your vision." The words hung in the air, a lifeline dangled over a chasm. Mila's breath caught, her fingers tightening around a syringe she was cleaning. A rescue center. Her buried dream, offered so casually it felt like a trap. "Why me?" she asked, her voice edged with suspicion, searching his face for an agenda. Nathan's eyes softened, a flicker of vulnerability breaking through his steady demeanor. "Because Max hasn't trusted anyone since my wife passed. He trusts you. That's enough for me." He slid a business card across the counter. The embossed words Nathan Hart, CEO, Hart Tech, glinting under the fluorescent light. "Think about it," he said, and with a nod he left, Max's tail wagging like a metronome. Mila clutched the card, its edges sharp against her palm, a tangible challenge to her doubt. The clinic's hum resumed, dogs barking, phones ringing, but her mind was elsewhere, spinning with possibilities and risks. Trust was a currency she couldn't afford, not with Douglas's shadow looming, not with Emma's future at stake. Yet the idea of a rescue center, a place to save creatures like the tabby she'd sutured last night, stirred something deep within her, a ember she'd thought long extinguished. That afternoon, Mila stood in an empty warehouse on the edge of town, its concrete floors echoing with potential. Nathan had arranged the visit, his truck parked outside, its blue paint flecked with mud. Emma bounced beside her, clutching a stuffed dog, her eyes wide with wonder. "Will we save puppies here?" "Mommy?" she asked, her voice a melody of hope. Mila's throat tightened, her hand ruffling Emma's curls. "Maybe, baby," she said, her smile fragile but genuine. The space was vast, its high ceilings and wide windows promising a haven for the abandoned. Blueprints lay on a folding table, labeled Mila's Haven, a name that felt both foreign and achingly right. Nathan joined them, his boots soft on the floor. "What do you think?" he asked, his grin boyish despite the gray at his temples. Mila hesitated, her fingers tracing the blueprints, her heart warring between hope and fear. "It's overwhelming," she admitted, her voice barely audible. Emma tugged her hand, pointing to a corner. "That's where the dog beds go," she declared, and Mila laughed, the sound a brief release from the weight she carried. The moment shattered as a black SUV pulled up outside, its engine a low growl. Douglas stepped out, his police badge glinting like a weapon. His tailored uniform, a stark contrast to the warehouse's raw edges. "Nice setup, Mila," he sneered, his voice dripping with mockery as he approached. "Using that billionaire to buy Emma's love? I'll make sure the judge knows." Mila's stomach churned, her fists clenching at her sides. Emma shrank behind her, sensing the tension. "Leave us alone," Mila said, her voice trembling but resolute, a mother's fire kindling within. Douglas leaned closer, his breath hot. "You're nothing without me. Emma's mine." He turned, the SUV's tires screeching as he sped. Away, leaving a cloud of dust that stung Mila's eyes. She stood frozen, Emma's small hand anchoring her to the present. Nathan's voice broke the silence, gentle but firm. "You okay?" he asked, his eyes searching hers. Mila nodded, though her hands shook as she hugged Emma tighter. "I have to be," she said, her resolve hardening like steel in a forge. They left the warehouse, the blueprints tucked under her arm, a fragile promise of what could be. That night, Mila sat at her kitchen table, Emma asleep in the next room. The business card lay before her, Nathan's offer a beacon in the dark. Her phone lit up with a new message, not from Douglas but from a local blog. "Black vet seduces tech mogul to steal child." The words hit like a fist, her breath catching as she scrolled through venomous comments. Her hands trembled, the card slipping. To the floor. Another message flashed. "Douglas, you're finished." The storm outside rumbled, mirroring the chaos in her heart, but Mila's eyes burned with defiance. She picked up the card, her fingers steady. For Emma, for the animals she would fight, even if the world stood against her. The warehouse that housed Mila's haven hummed with new life, its concrete walls now splashed with fresh paint, the air thick with the scent of sawdust and possibility. Mila Johnson stood amid stacks of crates, her dark skin dusted with plaster, as she hammered a wooden frame for a dog kennel. Her hands, steady despite the ache from long hours, moved with a purpose that belied the turmoil gnawing at her heart. Outside, the Oak Ridge dusk settled, the sky a tapestry of indigo and gold. But Mila felt the weight of eyes, neighbors passing by, their glances sharp with suspicion, their whispers carried on the evening breeze. The blog's venomous words, "Black vet seduces mogul," had spread like wildfire, branding her an outsider in a town that already viewed her with unease. Emma darted through the warehouse, her laughter a bright thread in the tapestry of Mila's resolve. The 6-year-old clutched a paintbrush, dabbing yellow onto a sign that read Mila's Haven, its logo, a puppy beneath a smiling sun, born from her crayon sketches. "Look, Mommy!" Emma called, her curls bouncing as she pointed to her work. Mila's chest tightened, her smile a fragile shield against the fear that Douglas's threats would steal this moment, this dream. She knelt beside her daughter, brushing a smudge from Emma's cheek. "It's perfect, baby," she said, her voice soft but fervent, a vow to protect this spark of joy. Nathan Hart arrived, his truck crunching gravel outside. He stepped through the door, his plaid shirt rolled up, a toolbox swinging in his hand. "Ready to build?" he asked, his grin cutting through the warehouse's dimness like a shaft of light. Mila nodded, grateful for his presence, though her pride still chafed at the scale of his support. Together they assembled kennels, their hammers syncing in a rhythm that felt almost sacred. Emma flitted between them, handing nails with exaggerated care, her chatter filling the space. "Mr. Nate, will we save all the dogs?" she asked, her eyes wide. Nathan's laugh was warm, his gaze flicking to Mila. With your mom in charge, we'll save everyone. The day blurred into a montage of progress, walls painted, crates stacked, a chalkboard listing volunteer shifts. Mila's heart swelled with each task completed, but the townsfolk's sidelong glances lingered, a reminder of the blog's poison. She pushed the thought aside, focusing on the beagle they'd rescued that morning, a trembling creature with ribs stark against its fur. Mila had named it Scout, coaxing it to eat with gentle words, her hands a balm to its fear. Saving Scout felt like a defiance of the world's cruelty, a small victory against the voices that called her unworthy. But the clinic's betrayal came swiftly. Dr. Ellis called Mila to his office, his face a mask of smug authority. "We're letting you go," he said, his voice devoid of warmth. "Performance issues." The lie was as blatant as the smirk. He didn't bother to hide. Mila's fists clenched, her nails biting into her palms. She knew the real reason. Her work on the Haven threatened his ego, her success a rebuke to his prejudice. "Fine," she said, her tone icy, refusing to give him the satisfaction of her anger. She left the clinic, her scrubs still on, the weight of unemployment settling like a stone in her gut. The Haven was her lifeline now, its promise the only thing keeping her from despair. That evening, Mila and Nathan sat on crates, sharing coffee from a thermos as Emma napped on a blanket nearby. The warehouse glowed with string lights, a makeshift warmth against the gathering dark. Nathan spoke of his late wife, her battle with cancer, his voice a low current of grief and resilience. "She loved animals too," he said, his eyes distant. "You'd have liked her." Mila listened, her guard softening, the shared vulnerability weaving a fragile bond. She wanted to tell him about Douglas, about the custody fight, but the words caught in her throat, trapped by years of solitude. The peace was shattered at 2 a.m. when Mila's phone blared with the Haven's alarm. She bolted from her apartment, Emma clutched in her arms, her heart pounding as she sped through Oak Ridge's silent streets. The warehouse loomed ahead, flames licking its roof like hungry tongues, smoke curling into the starless sky. A crowd had gathered, their faces lit by the fire's glow, some horrified, others jeering. "This is what happens to outsiders," a man shouted, his voice a blade that cut through Mila's shock. Her knees buckled, but Emma's sobs spurred her forward. She handed her daughter to a volunteer, a young woman with wide eyes, and plunged into the warehouse, the heat searing her skin. Inside, the air was a choking haze, the crackle of flames deafening. Mila stumbled to the kennels, her lungs burning, as she fumbled with the latches. Scout's whimpers guided her, and she freed the beagle, shoving it toward the door. Other dogs barked, their panic a chorus of desperation. She worked frantically, her hands raw, her vision blurring. A beam groaned above, splintering, and Mila froze, the weight of her dream crumbling around her. Then Nathan was there, his silhouette, cutting through the smoke. "Mila!" he shouted, pulling her from the beam's path, his grip firm as they freed the last dogs together. They staggered outside, coughing, the night air a cold shock against their singed skin. Emma ran to them, her face streaked with tears. Nathan lifted her, his shirt charred, his voice steady despite the chaos. "You're safe," he said, his eyes locking with Mila's, a silent vow that pierced her fear. The crowd's murmurs faded as firefighters battled the blaze, their hoses hissing like angry serpents. Mila clutched Scout, the dog trembling against her, and surveyed the wreckage. Half the warehouse stood, but the roof was gone, her dream gutted. The volunteer approached, her voice shaking. "I heard them laughing. Said it was on purpose." Mila's blood ran cold, Douglas's face flashing in her mind, his threat. "You're finished now," a prophecy fulfilled. Nathan stood beside her, his hand brushing her arm, an anchor in the storm. "We'll rebuild," he said, his tone unyielding. Mila nodded, though her heart quaked. The police arrived, their flashlights sweeping the scene, and an officer confirmed the fire was arson, a Molotov cocktail the likely cause. Mila's gaze fell to the ground, where a scrap of paper lay singed but legible. relieve or worse. Her breath hitched, the misspelled word a chilling signature of intent. She tucked it into her pocket, her fingers steady despite the dread coiling within. Douglas's shadow loomed larger now, his malice a tangible force. As the crowd dispersed, Mila held Emma close, the girl's small frame grounding her. Nathan's truck idled nearby, its headlights cutting through the smoke. "Come with me," he said, his voice a lifeline. Mila hesitated, pride warring with exhaustion, but Emma's yawn decided for her. They drove to a motel, the Haven's ashes behind them, but Mila's resolve burned brighter than the fire. For Emma, for Scout, for the dream Douglas sought to destroy, she would fight. The night stretched endlessly, but in her pocket the paper's weight was a challenge she would meet, a spark of defiance that refused to die. The dawn after the fire painted Oak Ridge in hues of ash and regret, the air still acrid with the memory of flames. Mila Johnson stood amid the charred skeleton of Mila's Haven, her dark skin dusted with soot as she sifted through debris. Her hands, raw from the night's chaos, clutched a singed crate, a relic of the dream Douglas had tried to burn away. Emma sat nearby, sketching on a volunteer's notepad, her small frame a beacon of resilience that steadied Mila's fraying nerves. The warehouse was half ruined, but the community's response surprised her. Neighbors arrived with water bottles, blankets, a quiet show of support that countered the jeers of the fire's spectators. Mila's heart, bruised but unbroken, found solace in their presence, a whisper that she wasn't as alone as she'd feared. Nathan Hart's truck rumbled up, its tires crunching over gravel. He stepped out, his eyes shadowed with determination, a stack of plywood under one arm. "We start today," he said, his voice a bulwark against despair. Mila nodded, her throat tight with gratitude she couldn't voice. They worked side by side, clearing rubble, salvaging what they could. Volunteers joined, their hammers echoing like a heartbeat, rebuilding not just walls but Mila's faith. Emma's laughter rang out as she handed out nails, her latest drawing, a puppy named Scout under a rainbow taped to a surviving beam. "You're my hero, Mommy," she said, her words a salve to Mila's wounds. The girl's trust fueled her, a reminder of the custody hearing looming, a battle she couldn't afford to lose. Nathan had hired Rebecca Stein, a lawyer with a reputation for dismantling powerful men like Douglas. Mila met her at a diner, the air thick with grease and tension. Rebecca's sharp eyes scanned a file, her voice crisp. "We've got evidence," she said, sliding over photos of the arson's aftermath and a witness statement linking Douglas to a known troublemaker. "He's been careless. Texts, payments. We'll use this." Mila's fingers traced the edge of a photo, her pulse quickening. Douglas's cruelty, once confined to their marriage, now threatened her daughter, her dream. "What about the hearing?" she asked, her voice low. Rebecca's smile was a blade. "We show you're stable, devoted. The Haven's your strength." The courthouse loomed like a gray sentinel, its stone steps slick with morning dew. Mila climbed them, her second-hand blazer itching, her dark skin damp with nervous sweat. Emma was with a volunteer, spared the day's ordeal, but her absence was a void in Mila's chest. Rebecca waited inside, her briefcase a shield, her confidence a lifeline. Nathan joined them, his plaid shirt traded for a dark jacket, his presence a steadying force. "You've got this," he said, his hand brushing Mila's arm, a fleeting warmth that eased her trembling. The hearing room was smaller than Mila expected, its oak benches polished to a cold sheen. Douglas sat at the prosecution table, his police uniform crisp, his smirk a weapon honed by years of control. His lawyer, a wiry man with a predator's grin, rose first. "Your Honor," he began, his voice slick, "Ms. Johnson is financially unstable, relying on a billionaire's handouts. She's unfit for Emma." He slid forward bank statements, Mila's meager savings laid bare. Her face burned, shame and fury warring within her, but Rebecca's hand on her wrist kept her grounded. Rebecca stood, her posture unyielding. Your Honor, Ms. Johnson is the heart of Mila's Haven, a rescue center generating stable income. She presented a contract, registered with Nathan's help, detailing the Haven's operations. This, plus her devotion to Emma, proves her capability. Douglas's head snapped toward Nathan, his eyes narrowing, but Rebecca pressed on, producing texts from Douglas. Give up, Mila. You're nothing. The judge, a woman with gray hair and a gaze like steel, leaned forward, her pen scratching notes. These are concerning, she said, her tone sharp. Mila's heart raced, her fingers twisting under the table, Emma's rainbow drawing a talisman in her pocket. Douglas's lawyer countered, his voice rising. She's manipulating the court, using this haven as a front to cozy up to. Hart, the accusation stung, echoing the blog's lies. But Rebecca was unfazed. She handed over a volunteer's affidavit, praising Mila's care for Emma, and a photo of mother and daughter painting the Haven sign, their smiles radiant. Ms. Johnson is a mother who fights for her child, Rebecca said, her voice a clarion call. The judge's expression softened, a flicker of empathy breaking through her severity. Mila's breath caught as the judge spoke. Based on the evidence, I grant temporary joint custody, 1 week alternating between parents. Her gavel struck, a sound of reprieve but not victory. Mila exhaled, tears pricking her eyes, the weight of Douglas's gaze heavy on her. He leaned close as they left the room, his whisper venomous. You'll lose everything. Her legs trembled, but she held his stare, her voice steady. Not Emma. He stormed out, his badge glinting like a threat. Outside, Nathan waited, his truck idling under a sky now clear of clouds. You did it, he said, his smile a quiet triumph. Mila shook her head, her voice thick. It's just a start. Rebecca clapped her shoulder. First win, we're building a case. The lawyer's confidence was a spark, but Mila's mind churned. Douglas's words, the arson, the paper in her pocket. Relieve, or worse. She climbed into Nathan's truck, Emma's drawing an anchor against her fear. He drove to a Hart Tech property, a sprawling field dotted with oaks, its barn a potential new home for the Haven. This could be yours, Nathan said, his eyes earnest. A fresh start. Mila stepped onto the grass, the earth soft under her sneakers, the barn's weathered wood glowing in the sunlight. The idea of rebuilding here, free from the warehouse's ashes, was a siren's call, but doubt gnawed at her. Accepting Nathan's help felt like stepping onto thin ice, risking dependence in a world that had taught her to stand alone. I don't know if I can, she admitted, her voice barely audible. Nathan's hand hovered near hers, not touching, a gesture of respect. You don't have to decide now, he said. Just know it's here. They returned to the motel, Emma's volunteer waiting with a sleeping girl in her arms. Mila cradled her daughter, the girl's warmth a balm. To her frayed nerves, Nathan lingered, his presence a quiet promise. Get some rest, he said, his voice soft. Mila nodded, but sleep felt distant. Alone in their room, she sat by the window, the town's lights blurring through her tears. Her phone buzzed, a photo flashing on the screen, Mila and Nathan. At the warehouse, his hand on her shoulder, a moment of camaraderie twisted into something sinister. Douglas's message followed. Think I don't see you with him? Her blood ran cold, the image a noose tightening around her dream, her daughter, her life. But Mila's fingers closed around Emma's drawing, its rainbow a defiance of the dark. She would rebuild, she would fight, and no fire, no threat would break her. The new Mila's Haven rose from the Hart Tech property like a phoenix, its barn transformed into a sanctuary of polished wood and gleaming kennels. Mila Johnson moved. Through the space, her dark skin catching the morning light as she adjusted a water bowl for Hope, a pit bull she'd rescued from a ditch, his scars a mirror of her own. The dog's trusting eyes steadied her, a quiet defiance against the storm brewing beyond these walls. Her hands, calloused but gentle, trembled with the weight of Douglas's latest assault. A photo of her and Nathan, twisted into a lie that now fueled a vicious campaign. The custody battle for Emma, her 6-year-old beacon, loomed ever closer, and Mila felt the town's gaze, sharp with judgment, piercing her resolve. Inside, the haven buzzed with life. Volunteers swept floors, their chatter mingling with the soft barks of dogs settling into their new home. Emma darted between crates, her curls bouncing as she helped bathe a scruffy terrier, her laughter a melody that anchored Mila's heart. The girl's latest drawing, a stick figure family with hope under a crescent moon, hung on the office wall, a testament to her faith in their future. Mila paused to watch her, her chest tightening with a love so fierce it hurt. But the haven's promise was tainted by the town's whispers, amplified by Douglas's injunction claiming she was replacing him with Nathan. Flyers littered Oak Ridge, branding the haven a rich man's folly, and Mila's inbox overflowed with hate. Gold digger, outsider, unfit mother. The blow came at school. Emma returned home, her eyes red, clutching her backpack. "Kids said you're a bad mom," she whispered, her voice small. "They said you're with Mr. Nate for money." Mila knelt, pulling her daughter close, the scent of crayons grounding her fury. "They're wrong, baby," she said, her voice steady despite the ache within. "I'm fighting for you always." But the words felt fragile against the tide of lies. Volunteers dwindled, some citing concerns fed by the flyers, and Mila's hope wavered, a candle flickering in a gale. Nathan arrived, his truck kicking up dust, his face etched with resolve. "We're not letting this stand," he declared, his voice a low growl of defiance. He'd hired a PR firm to counter the smears, their press release praising Mila's work at the Haven, but the damage lingered. "We need the community back," he said, proposing an adoption day to showcase the Haven's mission. Mila nodded, her pride swallowing the urge to protest his involvement. The event took shape. Banners strung across the barn, tables laden with treats, dogs groomed to perfection. Mila poured herself into preparations, her hands stitching bandanas for the animals, her mind racing with fear of failure. The adoption day dawned bright, the field outside the Haven alive with families, their curiosity a fragile bridge over the town's divide. Mila stood at the entrance, her smile a practiced mask, greeting visitors while Emma handed out flyers with Hope's picture. The pit bull, now strong and glossy, wagged his tail, a living testament to Mila's care. An elderly couple adopted a spaniel, tears in their eyes as they thanked her. "This place is a blessing," the woman said, and Mila's throat tightened, a spark of validation piercing her doubt. Nathan worked the crowd, his charm easing tensions, but Mila felt his gaze on her, a steady anchor that both comforted and unnerved. Yet the lies persisted. A local reporter, swayed by Douglas's influence, cornered Mila, her questions barbed. "Is this rescue just a front to impress your benefactor?" Mila's fists clenched, but she answered calmly, her voice a blade honed by necessity. "Every dog here has a story. I'm giving them a future, same as I'm fighting for my daughter." The reporter faltered, and Nathan stepped in, deflecting with a story of Hope's rescue. The crowd applauded, but Mila's heart pounded. The weight of scrutiny, a chain around her neck. Rebecca Stein, the lawyer, called Mila to her office, her desk strewn with evidence. "Douglas is desperate," she said, her glasses glinting as she spread out documents. Bank records showing payments to bloggers, surveillance footage of his hired investigators tailing Mila. "He's breaking laws to break you." Rebecca's plan for the emergency hearing was surgical. Expose Douglas's tactics, affirm Mila's stability, and leverage Nathan's testimony. Mila's fingers traced a photo of Emma, her resolve hardening. "What if they believe him?" she asked, her voice barely audible. Rebecca's smile was fierce. "They won't. We've got truth." The preparation consumed Mila, her nights spent reviewing evidence, her days at the Haven a blur of care and outreach. But the strain showed, Her hands shook as she fed hope, her eyes hollow with sleeplessness. Nathan noticed, pulling her aside during a quiet moment. "You're carrying too much," he said, his voice soft but firm, his hand hovering near hers. Mila's defenses flared, the blog's lies echoing. In her mind, "I have to," she snapped, then softened, guilt twisting her gut. "I'm sorry, it's just, what if they see us like he says?" Nathan's eyes held hers, a storm of sincerity in their depths. "Is there an us?" he asked, his voice low, vulnerable, cutting through the barn's hum. Mila froze, her breath catching. The question hung between them, heavy with unspoken truths. Her heart, battered by years of betrayal, yearned to trust, but fear held her back. "I can't," she said, her voice breaking, turning to adjust a crate, the wood cool under her fingers. "Not now. Emma's all that matters." Nathan nodded, stepping back, his expression a mask of quiet pain. "I'm here, Mila. Whatever you need." The silence that followed was a chasm, filled only by hope's soft whine. The night before. The hearing, Mila sat in her motel room, Emma asleep beside her, her small chest rising and falling. The Haven's adoption day had brought back some volunteers, but the town's trust remained fragile, and Douglas's injunction loomed like a guillotine. Mila's phone lay silent, but her mind replayed the photo, the flyers, the reporters, questions. She rose, pacing to the window, the motel's neon sign casting a sickly glow. A knock startled her. A volunteer, her face pale, handed her a letter slipped under the Haven's door. "Bail, or Emma pays." The misspelled threat, A.E., cousin to the arson note, sent ice through Mila's veins. She clutched Emma's drawing, its crescent moon a faint promise of light. Mila sank onto the bed, the letter a weight in her hand. Douglas's malice was a hydra, each blow spawning new heads, but she refused to break. She tucked the letter into her bag, beside Rebecca's files, her fingers steadying as she kissed Emma's forehead. The hearing would test her, but Mila's love for her daughter, her passion for the Haven, burned brighter than any lie. Outside, the night hummed with crickets, a deceptive calm before the storm. She closed her eyes, hope's image in her mind, a reminder that scars could heal, that she could fight. Tomorrow she would face Douglas, the town, the world, and she would not falter. The morning of the emergency hearing dawned with a restless sky, clouds churning over Oak Ridge like a warning. Mila Johnson stood before a cracked motel mirror, smoothing the creases of her second-hand dress, its navy fabric a quiet armor against the battle ahead. Her dark skin gleamed with a sheen of resolve, her hands steady despite the letter. "Bail, or Emma pays," burning in her purse beside Emma's drawing of hope under a crescent moon. The threat, a venomous echo of Douglas's malice, had kept her awake, but Mila's heart held fast, anchored by her daughter's trust and the Haven's fragile rebirth. Today, she would face the courthouse, Douglas's lies, and the weight of a town's judgment, and she would not break. Mila left Emma with a volunteer at Mila's Haven, the barn's warmth a stark contrast to the chill of her fear. The pit bull, Hope, nudged her hand, his gentle whine a reminder of why she fought, for the wounded, the voiceless, for her daughter. She drove to the courthouse, her sedan rattling through streets lined with oaks, their leaves whispering secrets. Nathan Hart waited outside, his usual plaid swapped for a tailored vest, his presence a lighthouse in her storm. "You're not alone," he said, his eyes locking with hers, a vow that steadied her trembling fingers. Rebecca Stein joined them, her briefcase bulging with evidence, her sharp nod a silent promise of victory. The hearing room was a crucible, its air thick with tension, the oak benches gleaming under fluorescent light. Mila sat beside Rebecca, her pulse a drumbeat as Douglas entered, his police uniform a calculated display of authority, his smirk a blade honed by confidence. His legal team, 3 lawyers with predatory grins, spread photos across their table, snapshots of Mila and Nathan at the Haven, his hand on her shoulder, her smile misread as intimacy. The judge, a stern woman with gray hair and eyes like flint, called the case, her voice slicing through the room. Injunction for parental alienation. Santos v. Johnson. Douglas's lead lawyer rose, his tone oily with contempt. Ms. Johnson is replacing Mr. Santos with Nathan Hart, causing psychological harm to their child, he declared, projecting the photos on a screen. The images, Mila laughing as they fed hope, Nathan steadying her during a volunteer shift, twisted innocent moments into a narrative of betrayal. Mila's stomach churned, her nails digging into her palms, but Rebecca's calm presence kept her anchored. The lawyer's voice grew smug. These prove an inappropriate relationship, destabilizing Emma. Rebecca stood, her posture a wall of defiance. Objection, Your Honor, speculation. She countered with a folder, her voice clear and cutting. These photos were illegally obtained by Mr. Santos's hired investigators, a violation of privacy. She presented grainy footage of a man tailing Mila, his face caught on the Haven security cameras, and bank records tracing payments from Douglas to a local blogger. The judge's brow furrowed, her pen scratching as Rebecca continued. Mr. Santos is orchestrating a smear campaign to intimidate my client, a dedicated mother and community leader. Mila's breath hitched, the room's silence a weight, pressing against her chest. Douglas shifted, whispering furiously to his team, his composure fraying. Rebecca called Nathan to the stand, his steps measured, his vest a quiet nod to the gravity of the moment. What is your relationship with Ms. Johnson? She asked, her tone neutral. Nathan's voice was firm, a river running steadily over stones. She's my partner in Mila's Haven, a rescue center saving lives. She's a mother who'd do anything for Emma. His gaze flicked to Douglas, unyielding. I've seen men use power to control. Emma needs her mother, not that. The judge's pen paused, her eyes narrowing as she studied Douglas, whose face reddened under the scrutiny. Mila's heart pounded. Emma's drawing a talisman in her purse, its crescent moon a beacon of hope. Rebecca pressed her advantage, submitting a volunteer's testimony praising Mila's care, a teacher's letter detailing Emma's happiness, and a financial statement showing the Haven's growing revenue. Ms. Johnson is stable, loving, and targeted by Mr. Santos's illegal tactics, she concluded, her voice a clarion call. Douglas's lawyer scrambled, his voice rising. These are distractions. The photos prove her priorities lie with Hart, not her child. But the judge cut him off, her tone sharp. Explain these transactions, Mr. Santos. She held up Rebecca's bank records, her gaze piercing. Douglas stammered, They're irrelevant. His voice cracking, his lawyer's whispers urgent but futile. The judge's ruling came like a thunderclap. I deny the injunction. I'm ordering an investigation into Mr. Santos's activities. Her gavel struck, a sound of triumph that sent Mila's tears streaming down her face, her hand covering her mouth to stifle a sob. Rebecca's smile was a quiet victory, her hand on Mila's shoulder a steadying force. Douglas stormed out, his team trailing like chastened shadows, his badge no longer a shield. Mila's legs trembled as she stood, her gaze finding Nathan in the hallway, his face warm with pride. You did it, he said, his voice soft but fervent. She shook her head, her tears falling freely. We did, she corrected, her voice thick with gratitude. The drawing's weight in her purse a reminder of Emma's love. The Haven was a hive of celebration that evening. Volunteers, stringing lights across the barn, their laughter mingling with the dog's playful barks. Mila moved through the crowd, her dress swapped for a Haven t-shirt, her dark skin glowing under the warm glow. Emma ran to her, her curls bouncing, a new drawing in hand. Nathan now joined their stick-figure family, hope at their feet. I drew Mr. Nate, she declared, and Mila's heart stuttered, the girl's innocence a mirror to her unspoken feelings. Nathan winked, ruffling Emma's hair, his ease a balm to Mila's nerves. Rebecca joined them, her glasses glinting as she raised a glass of lemonade. This is just the beginning, she said, her voice a promise. Mila nodded, her fingers tracing the drawing in her pocket. The victory sweet, but tempered by fear. Douglas's parting whisper, "This isn't over," lingered, a specter in the haven's warmth. Nathan sensed her unease, his hand brushing hers as they stepped outside, the night air cool against their skin. "You're stronger than he knows," he said, his eyes searching hers, a question unspoken in their depths. Mila's breath caught, the memory of their last conversation. Is there an us? Stirring within her. She wanted to speak, to bridge the chasm, but the weight of the hearing, the letter, held her back. "Thank you," she said instead, her voice barely audible, turning back to the barn's glow. Nathan nodded, his silence a promise of patience. The celebration continued, Emma dancing with volunteers, Hope chasing a ball, but Mila's mind was elsewhere, the specter of Douglas's next move a shadow on her heart. As the night deepened, Mila stood alone by the barn, the stars above her eye, fragile canopy. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "You won't win." Her blood ran cold, the words a twin to the letter's threat. She clutched Emma's drawing, its crescent moon a faint defiance, and vowed to protect her. Daughter, her haven, her hope. The battle was far from over, but tonight Mila had won, and that spark would carry her through the storm. The sun rose over the Hart Tech property, bathing Mila's haven in a golden glow that seemed to bless its rebirth. Mila Johnson stood before the barn, now a radiant sanctuary, her dark skin catching the dawn's warmth as she adjusted a sign above the entrance. Mila's Haven, its cursive letters paired with Emma's puppy logo, a testament to their shared dream. Her hands, steady despite the weight of the final custody hearing looming, smoothed her t-shirt, emblazoned with Hope's silhouette. The pit bull, now a sleek ambassador of the rescue, bounded nearby, his tail a metronome of joy. Mila's heart welled, but a shadow lingered. Douglas's whispered threat, "This isn't over," and the anonymous message, "You won't win," coiled like vipers in her mind. Inside, the barn hummed with anticipation. Volunteers bustled, arranging tables with homemade treats, their chatter mingling with the soft whines of dogs awaiting adoption. Emma darted through the chaos, her curls bouncing as she set wildflowers in mason jars, her 6-year-old enthusiasm a spark that lit Mila's resolve. The girl's latest drawing, a family under a starlit sky, Hope at their feet, hung in the office, a quiet promise of the home they were building. Mila paused to watch her chest tightening with a love that defied the town's lingering judgment, the flyers that still called her a fraud. The grand opening was a beacon, a chance to reclaim Oak Ridge's trust. Nathan Hart arrived, his truck laden with crates of supplies, his grin cutting through the morning mist. "Reinforcements," he called, unloading boxes with a volunteer named Clara, her warm smile a reminder of the community Mila was forging. Nathan's eyes met hers, a silent acknowledgement of their shared victory in court, but also the unspoken tension between them. Mila's gratitude warred with caution, the memory of his question, "Is there an us?" Still a fragile thread she wasn't ready to pull. Emma raced to Nathan, tugging his sleeve. "Mr. Nate, you're late," she teased, and he laughed, handing her a tiny wooden dog he'd carved. "For the boss," he said, winking. Mila's throat tightened, the gesture a bridge over the chasm of her doubt. "You didn't have to," she said, her voice soft, but her smile betrayed her warmth. Clara chimed in, her arms full of banners. "It's your day, Mila. We're making it shine." The words wrapped around Mila like a quilt, easing the chill of Douglas's threats. By 9 a.m., cars lined the field, families spilling out with curious eyes. Mila stood at the barn's entrance, her t-shirt a badge of her mission, greeting each guest with a practiced calm. The air filled with the scent of apple tarts and the joyful barks of dogs meeting potential owners. An elderly woman, her hands gnarled with age, adopted a collie, her voice trembling as she thanked Mila. "This feels like my childhood again," she said, and Mila's eyes stung. Her grandmother's lessons, love heals what hate breaks, echoing in her heart. She served coffee, her hands steady, each interaction a step toward redemption. Nathan moved through the crowd, his charm disarming skeptics, but his gaze returned to Mila, a steady pulse that grounded her. Emma, ever the ambassador, led children. To meet Hope declaring, "He's the bravest dog ever." The pit bull's gentle demeanor won hearts, and Mila's pride swelled, her dream no longer a whisper, but a roar. Clara's word of mouth had worked. By noon, 6 dogs had found homes, and donations piled high, a testament to the haven's impact. The moment of triumph faltered when a black SUV pulled up, its engine a low growl that sent a shiver down Mila's spine. Douglas stepped out, his police uniform crisp, his tie a slash of crimson against the pastoral scene. The crowd's chatter hushed, eyes flicking to the tension unfolding. Mila froze, her pulse hammering, but Nathan's hand grazed. Her elbow, his voice low. "Want me to ask him to leave?" She swallowed hard, her resolve steeling. "No," she said, her voice firm. "Let him see." She wouldn't run, not on this day of all days. Douglas approached, Emma spotting him and running over, her innocence untouched by his malice. "Daddy, come see the kitchen," she chirped, tugging his hand. He followed, his posture stiff, stopping at the counter where Mila stood, her hand steady despite the storm in her chest. "One tart," he said, his tone flat, his eyes scanning the bustling barn with a flicker of unease. Mila served the apple tart, the knife scraped loud in her ears, her movements deliberate. Douglas took a bite, his expression unreadable, then spoke almost to himself. "Tastes like your grandmother's." Emma beamed beside him. "Mommy learned from her." For a moment Mila saw a crack in his armor, a fleeting softness in his gaze as he looked at Emma. "You did well here," he said, his voice low, placing a $50 bill on the counter for a $5 tart. He hugged Emma, his touch brief but gentle, and left without another word, the SUV's rumble fading into the afternoon. Mila exhaled, the weight of years lifting slightly, her victory sweeter than the tart's cinnamon. Douglas's acknowledgement, however reluctant, was a chink in the wall he'd built between them. The day blurred into a whirlwind of adoptions, laughter, and clinking coins. Clara lit lanterns as dusk fell, their glow casting the barn in a dreamlike haze. Emma, exhausted, curled up on a blanket, her drawings scattered like petals. "We tired out our supervisor," Nathan teased, lifting her gently, his ease with the girl stirring Mila's heart. She cleaned the counter, the barn's warmth wrapping around her like an embrace. "It was perfect," she said, her voice thick with emotion, turning to Nathan. "Thank you for believing in me." He took her hands, his calluses rough against her skin, his eyes reflecting the lantern's light. "Always, Mila," he said, his voice a vow that sent a shiver down her spine. The crowd thinned, volunteers packing up, but Mila lingered, the barn a sanctuary she'd built from ashes. Outside, the sky burned with hues of amber and rose, a canvas of promise. She stepped into the field, Nathan beside her, Emma's soft snores a lullaby. Mila's fingers brushed the drawing in her pocket, its stars a mirror of the hope flickering within. But as the last guests left, Clara approached, her face pale. "A crate was tampered with," she whispered, pointing to a kennel, its latch bent, a dog missing. Mila's blood ran cold, Douglas's parting words, "This isn't over," resurfacing like a specter. She clutched the drawing, its stars now a challenge, her resolve hardening. The haven was her stand, her proof against his lies, and no sabotage would dim its light. The night stretched before her, a battlefield yet to be won. But Mila stood, tall, her heart a flame that refused to falter. The Oak Ridge courthouse stood like a granite fortress under a sky heavy with impending rain, its steps worn smooth by countless battles for justice. Mila Johnson climbed them, her best dress, a deep emerald that hugged her frame, clinging to her dark skin, damp with the morning's nervous sweat. Her purse held Emma's drawing, its stick figures under a starlit sky, a talisman against the fear coiling in her chest. The final custody hearing loomed, a crucible that would decide her daughter's future, and Mila's heart pounded with the weight of Douglas's threats. The tampered crate at Mila's haven a fresh wound. Yet Nathan's faith, the haven's triumph, fueled a resolve that burned brighter than her doubt. Inside, the hallway smelled of wax and worry, its fluorescent lights casting stark shadows. Rebecca Stein waited, her glasses glinting, a thick file under her arm. "We've got this," she said, her voice a steel thread weaving through Mila's anxiety. Nathan joined them, his dark jacket a quiet nod to the day's gravity, his eyes a steady anchor. "For Emma," he said, his hand brushing Mila's, a fleeting warmth that steadied her trembling fingers. Mila nodded, her throat tight, the memory of the missing dog still unfound gnawing at her, a shadow of Douglas's malice. The hearing room was a cauldron of tension, its oak paneling absorbing the weight of whispered fears. Mila sat beside Rebecca, her pulse a relentless drum as Douglas entered, his tailored suit a polished facade, his eyes betraying a flicker of unease. His lawyers, a trio of sharp suits, exuded confidence, but Mila sensed their strain. The investigation into Douglas's finances a noose tightening around them. The judge, the same stern woman from the injunction hearing, took her seat, her gray hair a crown of authority. "Final custody determination for Emma Santos," she announced, her voice a blade cutting through the room's hum. Rebecca rose, her presence commanding. "Your Honor, Ms. Johnson is a devoted mother, financially stable through Mila's Haven, a thriving rescue center." She presented a ledger of the Haven's earnings, glowing letters from Emma's teacher praising Mila's care, and a thick dossier of Douglas's misdeeds, police reports of his intimidation, texts threatening Mila, bank records hinting at illicit funds. "Mr. Santos's pattern of harassment now under investigation disqualifies him," Rebecca declared, her voice a clarion call. Mila's fingers tightened around her purse, the drawing's edges a lifeline, its stars a silent prayer. Douglas's lead lawyer countered, his tone slick with disdain. "Ms. Johnson's haven is a facade, a ploy to mask her unfitness," he argued, producing photos of Mila's modest apartment, her sedan's dents magnified to paint her as destitute. "She's an opportunist, not a mother." The words stung, but Mila held her head high, her dark skin a badge of endurance. Rebecca's rebuttal was swift, a volunteer's affidavit detailing Mila's late-night rescues, Emma's radiant smile at the haven's opening. "Stability isn't wealth," Rebecca said. "It's love, and Ms. Johnson has that in abundance." The judge's gaze shifted to Emma, who'd been brought to speak privately. Mila's heart lurched as her daughter disappeared behind a door, Nathan's hand squeezing hers, his touch a silent vow. Minutes stretched into an eternity, each tick of the clock a hammer on Mila's nerves. When Emma returned, her eyes found Mila's, bright with trust, her small nod a spark that ignited Mila's hope. The judge cleared her throat, her voice resolute. "Based on the evidence and the child's wishes, I grant full custody to Mila Johnson, with supervised visitation for Mr. Santos pending investigation." Mila's tears fell, her hand muffling a sob as the gavel struck, a thunderclap of victory. Rebecca's smile was a quiet triumph, her hand on Mila's shoulder a steadying force. Douglas's face crumpled, his lawyers silent as he rose, his suit no longer a shield. He left without a word, the door's thud a final note in his defeat. Mila's legs trembled, but Nathan's arm steadied her, his whisper warm against her. "Grace, you did it." She clung to him, the drawing in her purse a map to her heart, its stars now blazing. Outside, the clouds parted, sunlight spilling over the courthouse steps. Mila breathed deeply, the air sweet with promise. Nathan's truck waited, and as they drove to Emma's school, he spoke, his voice soft. "This is just the start, Mila." She nodded, her tears drying, the weight of years lifting with each mile. At the school, Emma ran to her, her curls bouncing, her laughter a melody that erased the courtroom's echoes. "Mommy," she cried. And Mila held her, the girl's warmth a home she'd fought to keep. That evening, Mila's haven glowed under a twilight sky, volunteers lingering after a day of adoptions. Mila stood in the office, Emma's drawing now framed beside Hope's photo, the pit bull napping nearby. Rebecca arrived, her glasses tucked away, a rare softness in her eyes. "You're unstoppable," she said, and Mila laughed, the sound a release of battles won. Nathan entered, his jacket shed, his grin boyish. "Ready for tomorrow?" he asked, and Mila nodded, her heart full, the haven's light a testament to her strength. But as the volunteers left, Mila's phone buzzed, a message from Clara. The missing dog was found, hurt near the old warehouse. Her blood chilled, the crate's tampered latch flashing in her mind, Douglas's shadow a persistent specter. She clutched Emma's drawing, its stars a defiance of the dark, and vowed to protect her sanctuary. The night stretched before her, a canvas of hope and vigilance. But Mila stood tall, her love for Emma, her passion for the haven, a flame that no threat could extinguish. The twilight over Mila's haven draped the Hart-Tech property in a velvet. Hush. Stars piercing the indigo sky like promises kept. Mila Johnson stood outside the barn, her dark skin kissed by the cool evening breeze, her hands tracing the Mila's haven sign, its cursive letters glowing with the weight of her triumph. Inside, the sanctuary thrummed with quiet life, dogs settling into kennels, volunteers' laughter fading as they left for the night. Hope, the pit bull, lounged at her feet, his scars a testament to their shared resilience. Mila's heart, once a battlefield of doubt, now beat with a steady certainty, anchored by her full custody of Emma and the haven's soaring success. Yet the wounded dog, found near the old warehouse, lingered in her mind, a final barb from Douglas, unproven but potent. Mila stepped into the barn's office, where Emma's latest drawing hung framed, a stick-figure trio, Mila, Emma, Nathan, with hope beneath a glowing moon. The 6-year-old's art was a map of their new life, rooted in a cozy cottage nearby, its walls alive with her sketches and the scent of cedar. Mila had saved the injured dog, a scrappy mutt named Ember, her hands working through the night to stitch his wounds, but the sabotage's shadow clung to her. No evidence tied Douglas to the act, and his silence since the hearing felt like a storm gathering strength. Still, Mila's resolve burned bright, her love for Emma and the haven, a flame no threat could snuff. The cottage door creaked as Mila entered, the air warm with the scent of lavender from a candle Emma had lit. Her daughter sat on the rug, clutching a jar of fireflies, their flickers dancing across her face. "Can we keep them, Mommy?" she asked, her curls framing a hopeful grin. Mila knelt, ruffling her hair. "Just for tonight, baby. They belong to the stars." The girl's nod was solemn, her trust a balm to Mila's lingering fears. The clock read 6 p.m., and Nathan was due, his presence now a cornerstone of their days, his quiet strength a melody she no longer resisted. The doorbell chimed, and Emma raced to open it, revealing Nathan, his plaid shirt dusted with sawdust, wooden horse in his hand. "Evening, champ," he said, handing it to her, his grin crinkling his weathered face. Emma squealed, clutching the toy, and darted to her room to add it to her collection. Mila's eyes met Nathan's, a warmth sparking within her, unguarded, and new. "You spoil her," she said, her voice soft, a smile betraying her delight. He leaned against the counter, his gaze steady. "Wanted to. Big day tomorrow." The final hearing's victory was fresh, but the haven's expansion under the Heart for Animals Foundation loomed, a dream Mila now dared to claim. She hesitated, the weight of his question, "Is there an us?" still echoing. "I'm scared," she admitted, her voice a whisper, her fingers twisting a dishcloth. "What if I can't keep this? Emma, the haven, safe?" Nathan stepped closer, his calloused hand brushing hers, a tether in the quiet. "You're her home, Mila. No one can take that." His touch lingered, a promise that steadied her racing heart. The cottage's glow wrapped around them, Emma's firefly jar casting fleeting shadows, a dance of light and trust. The next evening, The Havens field was a tapestry of celebration, a picnic under a starlit sky. Mila spread a blanket near the barn. Emma sprawled beside her, clutching her wooden horse, her laughter mingling with the volunteers' chatter. Nathan joined them, a basket of lemonade and sandwiches in hand, his ease a counterpoint to the battles. They'd fought. Hope bounded over, nudging Mila's hand, his warmth a reminder of her strength. The air smelled of grass and freedom, the Haven's success. Hundreds of animals saved, a community transformed, a crown she wore with quiet pride. Emma yawned, her voice proud. The judge asked if I was happy, she said, her eyes bright. I told her I love living with you, Mommy. Mila's heart swelled, her fingers tracing the drawing in her pocket, its moon a mirror of the night above. She looked at Nathan, his presence a home she hadn't dared imagine. My grandmother said we lose everything to find what matters, she said, her voice steady, a truth carved from pain. She was right. Nathan took her hand, his thumb grazing her knuckles, his eyes a constellation of hope. You found, Mila, a true home. He leaned in, his lips brushing her forehead, a vow of tomorrow's unspoken but felt. Emma stirred, curling against Mila, her firefly jar glowing faintly. Is Mr. Nate staying? She mumbled, her voice heavy with sleep. Mila's gaze held Nathan's, her heart unburdened. If he wants to, she said, her voice a soft melody. His smile was a sunrise, his hand tightening around hers. Always, he whispered, the word a bridge to a future they'd build together. The stars blinked above. A canopy of dreams realized. Mila closed her eyes, the scent of earth and fur enveloping her, the Haven's hum a lullaby. The threats, the sabotage, faded like mist, replaced by love. For Emma, for Nathan, for the woman she'd become. She was no longer just a veterinarian, a fighter, or a target of prejudice. She was home, rooted in the life she'd forged, animal by animal, heart by heart. The narrator's voice rose, a gentle coda. Mila's journey, from a woman shadowed by doubt to one who found her true home, reminds us that courage and love can light even the darkest paths. What stirred you most? Mila's strength, Emma's faith, or the Haven's hope? Share your thoughts, your city, the time of day, and let her story live on. The night stretched endlessly, but Mila's flame burned bright, a beacon for all who sought their stars. Thank you for joining Mila Johnson's journey, a testament to courage, love, and the unbreakable spirit that rises above adversity. From a veterinarian shadowed by doubt to a woman who built a home for her daughter and countless animals, Mila's story reminds us that hope can bloom in the darkest moments. What moved you most? Was it Mila's fierce devotion to Emma, Nathan's quiet strength, or the Haven's triumph over hate? Share your thoughts, your city, and the time of day. Your voices bring these stories to life. We're grateful for your presence and the heart you've poured into Mila's tale. Subscribe for more stories of resilience and redemption. And until we meet again, keep carrying your light, no matter the storm. Thank you, and we can't wait to share another journey with you soon.